They loved you. They cared deeply. And then one day, they were just gone. Welcome to Brainy One, where today we're diving into one of the most painful mysteries of the INFJ personality: why they disappear from the very people they love most. To outsiders, it might look cold or confusing, but for the INFJ, walking away is never impulsive. It's often the result of emotional overwhelm, quiet heartbreak, and feeling deeply misunderstood. When an INFJ disconnects, it's not because they stopped caring, it's because they've reached their emotional limit, and silence becomes their survival. In this video, we'll uncover the inner world of the INFJ during these quiet disappearances, the triggers, the reasons, and the hidden love behind their distance. If you've ever lost an INFJ or been one pulling away without words, this isn't just a video, it's a mirror. Let's begin. They feel emotionally overwhelmed but don't want to burden others. INFJ feel everything deeply. Joy, pain, disappointment, hope, it all runs through them like waves. But when those emotions start to pile up, when they feel drained, unseen, or misunderstood, they often don't talk about it. Why? Because INFJs don't want to burden the people they love. They may be falling apart on the inside, but on the outside, they're calm, kind, composed, because the last thing they want is to add their pain to someone else's plate. So instead of asking for help, they retreat, quietly, silently, disappearing into their own world, not to hurt you, but to protect you from their storm. They carry the weight alone because they think that's what strong people do. But behind that distance is a heart that's overwhelmed and just doesn't know how to say, I need space, but I still care. It's not rejection. It's self-preservation with love still intact. They sense imbalance and pull back to reflect. INFJ are masters at sensing what most people miss: emotional imbalance, unspoken tension, or shifts in energy that feel off. Even when everything looks fine on the surface, they feel when something isn't aligned, whether it's in the relationship, the dynamic, or even within themselves. And when that inner alarm goes off, they don't explode, they pull back, not to punish, not to play games, but to reflect. INFJs need solitude like air when things feel emotionally unstable. They step away to process what's real, what's theirs to carry, and whether they're still safe in the space they're in. They're not walking away from the person, they're stepping away from the imbalance to understand it before it becomes damage. If they disappear, it's often because they're asking themselves, is this connection still healthy? Or am I slowly losing myself in it? In that quiet reflection, it's their way of protecting both of you. They've been emotionally hurt repeatedly without resolution. INFJ are patient, sometimes too patient. They'll give second chances, offer understanding, and stay longer than they should, hoping things will change. But when emotional wounds stack up with no real resolution, something inside them starts to shift. It's not one big betrayal that makes them disappear. It's the quiet, repeated cuts, the comments brushed off, the moments dismissed, the pain that was never truly seen. Over time, those wounds add up, and their heart begins to close quietly. They won't yell. They won't demand closure. Instead, they'll silently retreat because they've realized that staying means slowly losing pieces of themselves. Disappearing isn't an act of revenge. It's a final act of self-respect. When an INFJ walks away from someone they love, it's rarely because they stopped caring. It's because they finally accepted this truth. Love without resolution becomes pain, and they can't keep bleeding silently. They disappear to heal in silence, not out of spite. When an INFJ disappears, it's not to hurt you, it's to heal themselves. They don't slam doors or make dramatic exits. They just fade quietly, gently. And that silence can feel cold, even confusing to those left behind. But behind that silence is a heart that's been carrying too much for too long. INFJ don't lash out when they're in pain. They turn inward. They reflect, write, walk, cry in solitude. They process the storm privately because that's the only place they feel safe enough to let it all out. Their disappearance isn't fueled by anger. It's driven by emotional survival. Sometimes they love you and need to leave at the same time, and the only way they know how to breathe again is alone. So if an INFJ disappears, know this. It's not rejection, it's recovery. And sometimes silence is the only space they have to hear themselves again. They feel deeply misunderstood, even in close relationships. INFJ can be surrounded by people who love them and still feel completely alone. Why? Because their inner world is deep, layered, complex. They think in emotions, metaphors, meanings, and often they don't know how to explain it all in words that others will truly understand. So even in close relationships, INFJ can feel invisible, not because people don't care, but because no one seems to fully get them. And that quiet ache of being emotionally misread or minimized, it builds. They smile, they nod, but inside they're thinking, you see me, but not really. After a while, that disconnect becomes too heavy, so instead of trying to explain it again, they disappear, not because they want distance from you, but because they're desperate to feel seen, even if it means retreating into solitude to find that clarity again. To an INFJ, feeling misunderstood isn't just frustrating, it's heartbreaking. They need space to reconnect with their identity and inner peace. INFJ gives so much of themselves emotionally, mentally, spiritually, that sometimes they lose track of who they are. In relationships, they absorb others' needs, emotions, even dreams. They listen deeply, show up fully, and often neglect their own inner world in the process. Slowly, their sense of self begins to blur. And when that happens, the INFJ quietly pulls away. Not to punish, but to remember. They retreat into solitude to reconnect with their values, their peace, their voice, not the voice they use for others, their own. It might feel like they're withdrawing, but really, they're returning to their center, their clarity, their truth, because without that, they can't keep giving. They can't love well if they've forgotten themselves. So when an INFJ disappears, understand this. They're not giving up. They're coming home to themselves. And when they return, they'll come back with deeper love. If the space they needed was respected. They choose distance over drama to avoid more damage. INFJs don't like conflict, but not because they're afraid of it. They avoid it because they understand how deep words can cut and how easily emotions can spiral into regret. So when things start to feel volatile, when conversations turn toxic, or the energy becomes too heavy, they don't escalate, they don't yell, they pull away. To some, it feels like abandonment, but for the INFJ, it's an act of protection for themselves and for the person they love. They choose distance over drama because they know that staying in a space that's emotionally explosive can do more damage than silence ever could. They disappear not to punish, but to prevent further pain. And how they hold the connection without destroying it. To love an INFJ is to understand this truth. Sometimes their silence isn't distance at all. It's a gentle way of saying, I care too much to keep hurting you. Or myself. They still love deeply even when they're gone. When an INFJ disappears, it's easy to assume they've stopped caring. But here's the truth most people never see. They often love the deepest when they're the furthest away. Just because they're silent doesn't mean they've shut off their heart. In fact, they may still replay memories, write letters they'll never send, or quietly wish you peace, even while staying away. INFJ don't leave because they stop feeling. They leave because they felt too much and had no safe space to process it. Their disappearance isn't a lack of love. It's often a last attempt to preserve the love that still exists. They love in silence, from a distance, in the pages of journals, the lyrics of songs, and the quiet hope that maybe one day you'll understand why they had to go. Because INFJs don't love lightly. And even when they walk away, their heart remembers everything. Have you ever been the INFJ who disappeared or the one left wondering why they did? Share your story in the comments. What did that silence really mean for you? Your voice might bring healing to someone who still doesn't have the words. If this video helped you feel seen, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more deep, soul-centered insights, right here on Brainy One. Sometimes walking away isn't the end of love. It's just the beginning of understanding.